Hello there. I put that up there so I know what to say. People actually largely do what they are rewarded for doing. And it doesn't mean you have to pay them. There are all kinds of ways to reward people. And I don't know if you've heard, but apparently the world has problems. Yeah. And so what we should be doing is rewarding the people that are doing their part to save us. And actually that's why I'm here, is because I think there is an enormous category of people who are given very little credit for doing exactly that. I'm talking about engineers. Engineers and computer scientists. Now, I'm not an engineer. I'm in advertising. I'm in the business of image. I'm in the business of shaping perception. And that has its limits. Yeah, say for example, there was an asteroid headed for Earth right now. It's going to destroy us completely, wipe us out, wipe out any vestige of our ever having been here. I'd have a hard time putting a happy face on that. You know, what we would need just then is somebody who can design and build and launch a rocket and nudge the asteroid out of the way. I mean, we need an engineer. We need somebody who can do the math. And today, while I'm not an engineer, I'd like to play the role of repairman. I'd like to fix something that I think is broken. And I'd like to fix it with this, with duct tape. And you think I'm kidding, but I'm not. I'm serious. You'll see. See, as I said, the world has real problems. Climate change and pandemics and giant oil spills. And yet, who do we reward? Who do we give our approval and our love and affection to? Whose exploits do we cheer? Whose autographs do we seek? Athletes and entertainers. And look, I mean, for the most part, these are very talented and wonderful people, but somebody has to actually design and build the real fixes to our problems. And, I mean, things like they have to figure out a way to make solar power cheaper than coal. And wouldn't it be nice if we could figure out a way to make gene therapies practical on a large scale? And we could sure use somebody who can figure out how to build a robot that can trap a girl that's trapped under a collapsed building after a Haitian earthquake. You know, if you want those things, you don't need the winner of American Idol. You need an engineer. And in the world of friction and rust and crappy politicians, what we need is somebody who can do the math and figure stuff out. And as sustainability becomes a bigger and bigger part, becomes vital to our economy and vital to our surviving as a species, well, we're going to need people that can figure out how to go 3 times as far on 1/10 as much. And so keeping that in mind, I'd like to show you something now. It's a commercial. It's not for engineers, but there's an idea in it that I think is relevant to what I'm talking about. So let's watch this together, and we'll discuss afterwards.
Whoa, you're not just gonna walk away and give up.
I'm stuck.
You can get that. That's yours. Nobody else. Get in there and give it some heat. Give it some heat. Get it some heat. Get in there and you get it. You go in there, baby, and you go get it hard. You get it. You get it. Get it. That's the one right there. You get it? Yes. All right.
Yeah, see now, that was done by Rethink out of Vancouver for a Canadian football team, but I think the principle is apt. And the principle is cheering works. People perform better with recognition and encouragement, and you know that. And you don't have to go very far, given what I was talking about before, to find people who really deserve it. Within 1,000 yards of where you're sitting right now, some of the most brilliant engineering and computer scientist minds are working on ways to solve our problems. And I think they deserve a little recognition, so I'd like to introduce you to some of them. This is Dr. Shivash Purkamali. Dr. Purkamali is a nanotechnologist, but he's also working on a special thing for photovoltaics. Among the many projects that he's working on, he is working on a way to make them work for us. Now, photovoltaics is the idea of taking sunlight and turning it into electricity, which that would be a neat trick. But the reason you don't find photovoltaics on every rooftop in the world powering our lives is that they're really expensive. And the sad truth is that they're simply not cost competitive with fossil fuels. Well, along comes Dr. Purkamali, and he and his team have figured out a process that's only 20% as efficient as current processes. So why is that a breakthrough? Because it costs 100 times less. Maybe that you're not getting that just now. What that means is solar power that cost $1 a minute ago costs a nickel. And that's not making a difference. That could be making the difference. All of a sudden, you've got solar power that's cheaper than coal? Well, look, it's not all the way to your rooftop yet. They still have a little bit to go. But they're on the 3-yard line, and now, I reckon, is the time for when the cheering counts. This is when it's going to make a difference. So, well, now, I'm glad you gave a little bit, but so did I, because I went to visit Shivash and his colleagues, and I brought some guests with me. So let's take a look at that.
Well, I'm really fascinated by the work. There's something I think that's important for you to see. I want you to see something out here.
Yeah. You like the bemused expressions on their faces? You know, when I talk, I think they look at me and they see a sort of smart dog. But they're just brilliant. These guys are brilliant. But they're not the only brilliant minds nearby. And I'd like to introduce you to somebody else. This is Dr. Corinne Langsfeld. Dr. Langsfeld is among the many projects that she works on. She's a hydrodynamic specialist, fluid dynamics, and she's working on a project to make gene therapy practical. Now, here's the thing. Gene therapy is the use of healthy DNA to treat diseases like cystic fibrosis. Potentially with a single injection, you can cure something like that. The problem is that in gene therapy, the actual healthy DNA is most of the time destroyed in the process of actual injection. But because Dr. Langsfeld is a hydrodynamic specialist, she figured out that the DNA was being destroyed by a process of cavitation. That is, it's the formation and popping of air bubbles in liquid. And you might as well say not popping, but exploding, because at that level, at the level of DNA, it's like strapping dynamite to it. But because she's an engineer, and not the actress playing her in the TV movie, she was able to actually calculate the precise speed of the injection, lowering it to the point where instead of a 5% survival of DNA, it goes to 85%. And that means that as the DNA survival goes up, the cost plummets, and all of a sudden, it's practical. It's viable. And yes, that deserves a little applause. It's early stages, but this may very well unlock treatment for a whole category of genetic disease. And do you think she's going to get a reality show anytime soon? She's too brilliant. She's too well-adjusted. I know that. I mean, who'd watch that? But speaking of brilliant and well-adjusted, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Mohammed Mahoor. Now, Dr. Mahoor, wow. Dr. Mahoor is a specialist in facial recognition software, and what he has been doing is he's been cataloging the varieties and intensities of facial expressions in thousands of children, half of whom are autistic. This is the work that he does. He enumerates and catalogs and digitizes the facial expressions, and he's quantifying the tiny differences in the facial expressions of infants, which can lead to a much earlier diagnosis of autism. And if you have any experience with this, you know the earlier the diagnosis, the greater chance therapy has of actually physically rewiring the brain and working around that problem. You could get from this work as much as a year of earlier diagnosis. And like I say, if you have experience with this, you know that that year, that would make a profound difference in the life of that child, in their schooling and their education and their relationships and ultimately their jobs and their productivity and their families and eventually the society. A profound difference. And if you're a parent, I can promise you, you would trade every Oscar, every Grammy, every World Cup, every Super Bowl trophy. You would trade every Olympic medal ever won for that year. You would. Gladly. And I mean, what are those things but trinkets compared to the lives of those kids and their families? Really. But you know what? There's no cheering. The fact is that a society that reveres athletes will get more athletes. A society that worships rock stars is going to get more rock stars. But we have problems. We have real problems. And what I think we need more of is engineers. And I will tell you that athletes and rock stars and actors, they're not chasing the money. What they're chasing is your love and approval. That's all they really want. That's all anybody really wants. And so I designed this. It's a logo for engineers. And I think you know what it is. It's duct tape. It's the international symbol for being able to fix pretty much everything. And as of right now, it's the symbol for engineers and computer scientists. And it goes really, really well on jerseys. And sweet. Look at this. Now, just so you know, they got lots of these outside. And let me tell you something. The reason they're on jerseys is this. Because I don't care what city you're from, and I don't care where you went to school. This is your team. Because if an asteroid is headed for Earth, you are not going to care who wins in the playoffs. You're going to be too busy cheering for the people that can do the math. So, thanks very much.